everybody. Welcome to the people in presence here at Expo 2020 and also to those who are following us on internet. So this workshop is organized by two clusters of the Emilia-Romagna region, one of the regions of Italy, which has an important food value chain, as you will realize shortly with the presentation. And we have chosen to give this workshop taking advantage of the week of food, agriculture and livelihoods here at Expo 2020. So we are starting about in time. You realize that these mixed presentations are quite difficult to manage because part of the people is here in presence, others are following, so there are some problems with the organization, which I hope will not prevent this workshop to be interesting and fruitful for all of you. My name is Sandro Fuzzi. I am a scientist at the Italian National Research Council, and I'm also the president of one of the two clusters that are organizing this workshop, the cluster Greentech, which deals with sustainability and with energy. You will learn shortly what these clusters are and the purpose that they serve. So the first presentation will be by Gianluca Baldoni of the internalization service of the region Emilia-Romagna, who will give the first address of this workshop. Please, Gianluca.
Thank you very much to the people in this room and connected by internet. It's a pleasure for me to be here and at this workshop and to have the opportunity to welcome the people participating on behalf of my region, Emilia-Romagna. My region, as it was said before me, is one of the 20 regions of Italy, is one of the most developed and industrialized regions among Italy and also among the European regions, with a strong industrial sector in many specializations, out of which one of the most important is surely the food sector, the food value chain. Region Emilia-Romagna is participating to Expo in cooperation with the Italian Pavilion. I'm sure you have visited it in these days. And cooperating also with Cibus, which is the organization which is hosting us today in this pavilion. Our intent, the intent of the region Emilia-Romagna in Expo, participating to Expo, is to present the regional economic and cultural system as a whole, and a system which is strongly oriented to innovation, to research and development in every different sector, and oriented also to the product quality. For this purpose, we have supported not only a direct participation of the region, but the participation of many organizations. directly and strongly committed with the R&D regional system, out of which the two clusters which are organized in the meeting of today, Agri-Food and Greentech, are important representatives. So it's just, my address is just to welcome you and to wish you to enjoy the workshop and to have a fruitful and interesting participation for today. Thank you very much, and I give the floor to the next speaker.
Okay. Gianluca. And the next speaker is Francesco Capozzi, who is a professor at the University of Bologna and is also vice president of the cluster Agri-Food.
Thank you very much, Sandro, Dr. Fuzzi, for making me and giving me the opportunity to present together with another cluster, the Greentech cluster, together with the Agro-Food cluster, a new session about sustainable production of food and agricultural activity. I have a very short presentation, and I will go very fast with my slides, not to bore you too much, but just to present why Greentech and Agri-Food are cooperating in getting a sustainable food sector. First of all, let me just show you the map of Italy and where Emilia-Romagna region is. It's just for the advantage of the people, the international attendees, because Italians know very well where we are. And it is very interesting to see that there are 9 locations, 9 provinces in Emilia-Romagna region, each one hosting different laboratories for innovation, different research centers for industrial research, as well companies are actually spread over the whole region, not only along the Via Emilia, it's the road that is crossing the Emilia-Romagna. And we say that the region has founded or let's say inspired the settlement of 7 clusters, okay, not only cluster Greentech and cluster Agri-Food. There are 7 clusters which are associations of public and private subjects. And there are research labs for innovation centers in synergy for the innovation development in the sector. Let's say that Emilia-Romagna is rich in production enterprises. There are a lot, 400,000 companies. Most of them are small and medium enterprises. And we are very well known for motor like Ferrari and of course other racing motors. And but not only, we are very, very proud to be also famous for food, for ceramics and so on. So we are, let's say, in charge for developing the smart specialization strategy together with the region Emilia-Romagna. So this is one of our goals. And we are, for this sector, it's very important to drive the development for our regional economy, which is really based on the agricultural and food sector. You can see some figures, economics and numbers that can make you understand what is the impact of this sector in the Emilia-Romagna region economy. And we are the holder of PDO and PGIs, which are quality mark labels, which are recognized from the European Union. And we are the first region in the European Union per number of PGI, so protected geographic indication and protected denomination of origin, with 44 food products and 29 wines. So we are, the cluster in Agri-Food is endorsing 25 research labs, 8 innovation centers, 43 enterprises, 5 training bodies. I will tell you why are so important training associations and institutions for that, for a total of 83 members. And we are representing 25,000 small enterprises in the sector. Our main goals are sustainable agriculture and precision farming. So we are making research and transfer innovation in this aspect, in these thematic areas. We are, of course, we are making our food production more and more nutritionally correct and with high nutritional quality. We are developing new processes which are more sustainable because they are impacting less and less with carbon footprint and water footprint. So we are developing technologies that are saving energy and natural resources. And of course, we are trying to reduce wastes and losses by circular economy, for example, by exploiting byproducts and waste valorization. So our activities are related to support the members, industrial members. We give also support to the institutions like the Emilia-Romagna Region governance with our support in, for example, developing the strategies for smart specialization. And we are also included in Italian clusters and European clusters as well. So we are just now making a short presentation with the several innovation that we are presenting here as representative of our members' activities, our members' capabilities. So we are developing plans in vivo monitoring to optimize water use efficiency. We are working with the digitalization and use of big data for precision farming and precision agriculture. We are involved in soil restoration because soil, arable and exploitable soils is becoming less and less, so we have to recover the soil in its own quality also by exploiting the biodiversity included in it. We are, of course, working with precision irrigation to save water. So we are developing technologies and methodologies that are saving from 35 to 50% of water. We have fruit yards that are exploiting less and less water. And we are, of course, working with processes that are saving energy and are developing methodologies and processing technologies that are using less energy, not only because energy has a cost, also in terms of environmental impact, but also because energy let's say, is also affecting and impacting the food quality. So if you are using less thermal processing, you are preserving quality, but you have to do that in the light of the shelf life, the durability of and stability of food products. So we are working with the sustainable food product and working on food traceability, because the value within and attached to the food must be preserved, and we have to guarantee customers and consumers that the quality they are buying, it's the quality that are claimed in the food products. So sustainable agriculture and technology, we are working with also mechanical optimization by using alternative fuels like hydrogen. Of course, we are working with storage just in terms of the sustainability. We are working with the storage conditions that are enabling to have higher stability for food. So we are saving time and we are working with analytical tools that are defining the quality not only from the nutritional point of view, but also from the sensorial point of view. You know that Italian food and Emilia-Romagna food is known not only for nutritional quality, but also because they have a good taste and good aromas. So this is very important to preserve and to continue the tradition, even if we put innovation in it. And so we have image analysis, we have data analysis, big data analysis, you see. We have an innovative system for logistics and digitalization and tracing, packaging technology, of course, not only for material but also for plants. We have very big companies that are developing important food plants for packaging, exploiting new materials, and we are valorizing what are byproducts from the same food industry by exploiting biofermentation. So we are using biotechnologies to exploit as much as possible the quality, not only of the mainstream products, but also for byproducts that have been saved and exploited. So we have environmental biotechnologies to preserve environments. We have training agencies, training centers, because the professional training must be parallel to the innovation. We are developing new technologies, but we need also to increase human capabilities, human capital for exploiting these new technologies. So we are able to train people with the new technologies, and so I'm inviting also people from outside also to come and visit Emilia-Romagna to get training in these new technologies. Okay, I think that I can skip and I can show you some of our companies that are well known and in the world and are members of our agriculture cluster. Thank you very much, and visit our website to get more information. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thanks a lot, Francesco, for this presentation. And to end up the opening session, now we have an intervention, recorded intervention by Alessio Mammi, who is the Councilor for Agriculture and Food of the Emilia-Romagna region. Unfortunately, this presentation is in Italian, but we have provided subtitles for the English-speaking people.
Buongiorno a tutte e a tutti e buon lavoro. Io voglio ringraziare di cuore il cluster Agritech per il lavoro che ha svolto nei mesi scorsi, che continuerà a svolgere. È un lavoro molto prezioso e importante per l'agricoltura e l'agroalimentare della nostra regione, un settore strategico, ce lo ha confermato la pandemia, di quanto sia importante continuare a investire sull'agricoltura, a sostenerla, a rendere le nostre imprese sempre più efficienti e competitive, perché abbiamo bisogno di continuare a produrre cibo sicuro e di qualità per tutti. La sfida dei prossimi anni sarà duplice ed è quella di riuscire a tenere insieme capacità di produrre e quindi la produttività e di farlo in modo sempre più sostenibile dal punto di vista ambientale e quindi sempre più puntando sulla qualità delle nostre produzioni, che è già molto elevata. Quando parliamo di sostenibilità per le nostre imprese è necessario declinarla sempre nelle tre accezioni: sostenibilità ambientale, sociale ed economica, e quindi se c'è equilibrio tra questi tre aspetti l'impresa può continuare a vivere, a svilupparsi, a innovare e a investire. E quindi davanti abbiamo davvero sfide epocali. Il compito delle istituzioni non è sostituirsi alle imprese, che sanno benissimo cosa occorre fare, ma è aiutarle, accompagnarle e sostenerle dentro la transizione ecologica e digitale. E sostenerle innanzitutto aiutandole a investire, quindi accompagnando gli investimenti, contribuendo anche a finanziarli, come facciamo e come faremo in Emilia-Romagna attraverso il piano di sviluppo rurale, 408 milioni di euro che verranno distribuiti entro giugno di quest'anno e che abbiamo già iniziato a bandire attraverso primi bandi per 67 milioni di euro alla fine del 2021 e due bandi molto importanti destinati alla competitività delle nostre imprese, finanziando la misura 4.1 e 4.2 del PSR per un ammontare complessivo di 120 milioni di euro che proprio pubblicheremo in questi giorni. Quindi aiutare le nostre imprese a investire, in particolar modo aiutare le imprese della filiera zootecnica a investire sempre di più sulla biosicurezza, sulla riduzione degli antibiotici, sul benessere animale, quindi sempre di più sulla qualità, e ovviamente lavorare insieme alle nostre imprese per ridurre sempre di più le emissioni in atmosfera di ammoniaca, e anche per questo recentemente abbiamo proprio emanato un bando da 10 milioni di euro rivolto alle imprese che potranno così coprire i lagoni, fare investimenti per ridurre queste emissioni in atmosfera, che contribuiscono naturalmente appunto all'impatto ambientale. Siamo tutti impegnati proprio per ridurle. E poi, oltre ad aiutare le nostre imprese a investire, dobbiamo investire moltissimo sulla ricerca, sulla conoscenza, sull'innovazione. Emilia-Romagna è la regione che ha investito la percentuale più alta delle risorse del piano di sviluppo rurale in conoscenza, ricerca e innovazione, oltre il 4% contro una media nazionale dell'1,5%. Continueremo a tenere alto l'impegno sulla ricerca, sull'innovazione, perché è proprio da qui che possono arrivare le tante risposte di cui hanno bisogno le nostre imprese per affrontare i problemi quotidiani legati alle fitopatie o ai devastanti effetti dei cambiamenti climatici. Dobbiamo investire sulla ricerca in termini quindi di risorse che dobbiamo mettere in maniera importante. Dobbiamo organizzare la ricerca in modo che sia efficace, possa aiutare davvero le imprese a trovare le risposte di cui hanno bisogno, e poi dobbiamo, soprattutto a livello europeo, consentire quella ricerca capace di offrire degli strumenti alternativi alle nostre imprese, in particolar modo nel momento in cui determinati principi, determinate molecole non vengono più rinnovate. Perché dentro la transizione ecologica e digitale nessuna impresa può essere lasciata sola. Il compito della politica e delle istituzioni è fare in modo che nella transizione, che comporta sempre cambiamenti epocali, le imprese possano affrontare le sfide, affrontare le difficoltà, affrontare i problemi, pensiamo appunto a quelli derivanti dai cambiamenti climatici, e anche cogliere le opportunità che ogni transizione può portare, quindi è il nostro compito fare in modo che possano essere colte da tutte le imprese. In ultimo, non di minore rilevanza, è importante il settore dell'acquacoltura, della pesca artigianale. Anche qui la Regione Emilia-Romagna, insieme all'ortofrutta e alla nostra zootecnia, è un punto di riferimento a livello nazionale, lo dimostrano i tanti progetti anche di natura ambientale che sono stati portati avanti dalle nostre marinerie, dalle imprese riunite nelle cooperative della pesca. C'è grande attenzione alla sostenibilità e alla qualità e continueremo quindi a investire anche in questo settore strategico che, come gli altri, ha bisogno di investimenti e ha bisogno di continuare a mettere in campo progetti nuovi per soddisfare peraltro una domanda di cibo, una domanda che sarà sempre più crescente a livello mondiale. Grazie per l'invito, non posso essere con voi, ci sono idealmente, però ci tenevo moltissimo a portare un saluto, a ringraziarvi per quello che avete fatto e anche aggiornarvi rispetto al lavoro che stiamo facendo. Buona giornata a tutti.
Okay, so this presentation ends the first session of this workshop. So we are entering now in the real part of the meeting. As you see from the program, I am in charge of the moderation of the presentations. As I said earlier, we have a mixed presence online and in situ. So this brings some problems. So the first recommendation that I have for the presenters is to stay within the times which are allowed. We have a small change because at the beginning we thought to keep the question time for the end of the meeting, but then we have realized that with people that are online, this will not be possible. So after each presentation, I plan to allow a couple of questions either from the floor or from the people online. So this meeting is composed, as you see from the program, of 3 sections. The first one is on food production, the second one is on transformation, transport and trade, and the third one is on consumption, just to be sure that we will cover all the food value chain. We have chosen to have some presentation from academia and research environment, but and that's important. We have also some interesting contributions from private industries and also from other clusters from other European countries, because as it was explained earlier by Francesco Capozzi, our main aim, the main aim of the clusters is to connect research and innovation to the actual productions, because it's the industries are, the companies are those who at the end are producing the value. So with all said, my second assignment is to give a short presentation just to set the scene, give a first impression of the subjects that we will hear about during the whole of this workshop. So if I can have the slides. Okay, so I will skip this first slides because what the clusters are has already been explained, so I don't need to go more in this issue. Just to remind that Agri-Food and Greentech, who are organizing this meeting, are two of the 7 clusters which cover the main expertises in the Emilia-Romagna region. So this workshop, as already said, is organized around three different areas. So just to start, the global food system of the coming decades is certainly very challenging for the whole humanity everywhere. And because we have the need of feeding an increasing number of people, but also to preserve the environment. So the food sector contains an intrinsic dichotomy because it has a considerable impact on the environment, on climate change, on air pollution, on soil pollution, water pollution, but at the same time it suffers the consequences of the changes in the environment. So the food system is interested by mainly by 5 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, the number 2, zero hunger, but also number 1, no poverty. The health, the one on health, and also the climate action. So the European Union has published, has set a strategy for the next decades, which is called Farm to Fork, which tells us that there is no single measure that can enable the global food system to be sustainable, but we need to have intervention on the food production, on the processing and distribution, on a sustainable consumption, and at the end also in preventing food loss and waste. Coming to climate change, that as you all know is one of the big issues, of the big problems in that our humanity is facing. 30% of the greenhouse emissions worldwide is due to the food system. although the food system in this concern has not received as much attention as it should. Perhaps because of the level of policy making, this seemed unavoidable environmental costs. So the feeding the people in a way is being considered more important than the cost of the changes of the environment and especially of climate. And an evaluation was made that even if all non-food system greenhouse emissions were immediately stopped, we will not be able, just due to the emission of the food system, we would not be able to meet the famous 1.5 degree increase in global temperature, which is the threshold that is considered that can still be managed. So, which are the climate effects of the food production? So, wheat, rice, maize, and soybean are providing 2/3 of the calories that the world population needs, and it has been evaluated that every degree of increase in global mean temperature would on average reduce the global yields of these species considerably, 6% concerning wheat, 3.2 rice, 7.4 maize, and 3.1 soybean. So this is an indication of the dichotomy that I was talking about earlier. So on one side, the food system is producing greenhouse gases, then climate change, but on the other hand, climate change is heavily impacting on the food system. There is another issue that was already brought up by the Councilor earlier, which are the emission of ammonia due to agriculture and the food sector in general. And emissions is nowadays one of the main components of the so-called PM 2.5, which is extremely dangerous for human health. And it's known that more than 90% of ammonia emissions worldwide are due to agriculture. We have here in this graph the distribution obtained through satellite measurements of the ammonia emissions areas of the world. And you see that certainly there are areas like the Indo-Gangetic Plain, some areas of China or in West Africa that are considerable emitters. But if you look at the second map on top, you also see that the region where we live, Emilia-Romagna, which is in the Po Valley, is unfortunately one of the main emitters of ammonia, and this is the reason why the Councilor has underlined earlier the need of making any possible effort to limit these emissions. Also, another pollutant that is important for agriculture is ozone, and there is a recent paper where they evaluated the loss of the whole East Asia area in terms of crop productions, which is evaluated around 63 billion USD per year in loss of grain annually because of the presence of ozone, which is a pollutant also to which the agricultural practices contribute. So concerning the food transformation, transport and trade, it's up to the operators with the means that they have to influence the consumers' dietary choices, the nutritional composition of the food that we eat, of managing transportation, merchandising, and marketing, so as that they can contribute also from this sector to the sustainability of the whole system. And that's according to the recent document of the European Community is their task for ensuring the sustainability of the system. In particular, food and packaging are a key element that influences the sustainability of the food system. So a lot of efforts are presently going on also in our region to eliminate as much as possible the inconvenience due to this element of the cycle. And another element that, according to the European Commission, is important is to foster the short supply chains to avoid the long haul transportation problems which add to the poor sustainability of the system. Concerning food waste, this is a big issue because, as strange as it might seem, in a world where millions of people don't have enough to eat, the food waste amounts around 900 million tons per year, which is roughly 17% of the global food production. As in this 17%, the major impact is due to household, which means to our everyday consumption. So if you look to this graph, this is something which was not so intuitive. You see the amount of loss in our household as a function of the GDP per capita in different countries. And what is strange is that this value is relatively flat. So almost all countries, no matter what their pro capita emissions have the same percentage of consumption. Perhaps we will hear more on the dedicated presentation later on. One very last point concerns the dietary choice. So the Western type of diet that we are used to. I mean, we in Europe and in other parts of the Western world, which means an high intake of meat and dairy products, is certainly not sustainable, but also impacts on the public health. So one of the recommendations is to shift towards a more plant-based type of diet, which could reduce global mortality by 6 to 10%, but even more important, greenhouse gas emissions by up to 70%. So it's something that would be very, very valuable. So we come to the end, the sustainable dinner that will be offered to the people here in the room, but by our clusters, and we will have a presentations later on by the chef that is preparing it that will explain us why and how this dinner should be considered sustainable. Unfortunately, I must say that we have no possibility, we don't have the means of distribute the food that will be served to the remote speakers and to all the people who are attending online. So we'll try next time, perhaps with some sort of teletransportation, if it will be possible. So with this, I end my presentation, which, as I said, was mainly meant to provide an overview of what we will hear in more detail, and perhaps also with more competence by the today's speakers. Okay, so the first presentation of section 1, which deals with food production, will be a joint presentation by Camilla Chieco of the Institute of Bioeconomy of the Italian National Research Council, and Maria Teresa Pacchioli of the Center for Research and Animal Productions, and they will mainly talk about the contribution of the food system to climate change and to the environmental problems in general. So, Camilla, the floor is yours now.
Thanks, Sandro. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Camilla Chieco, researcher of Institute of Bioeconomy of the National Research Council of Italy. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers to have invited me today. Together with my colleague Maria Teresa Pacchioli from the Research Center of Animal Production, we will introduce the topic of climate change in agriculture and how carbon farming can help the sector to be more resilient to climate change. And why does climate change happen? Very quickly, climate change are due to an increase of concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and these gases are able, in fact, to trap the heat in the atmosphere, causing an increase in the global temperature. The most abundant greenhouse gases in Earth's atmosphere are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and ozone. And this gas can have both natural or anthropogenic origins. And we know that since the industrial era, human activities have added a big amount of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, mainly due to the burning of fossil fuel and to deforestation. And the main human source of greenhouse gases are in the industrial sector and transport sector, especially for CO2 emission. While methane is mainly emitted by livestock sector, but also by landfill, rice cultivation, and also wetlands. Instead, nitrous oxide is mainly emitted from soil fertilization and also from chemical industry processing. The increase of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere causes an increase in global temperature that has both a direct effect, such as the warming of the sea and the melting of glaciers, but the increase of temperature has also indirect effect. In fact, global warming causes an intensification of extreme events such as heat waves, flooding, and changing frequency, intensity, and timing of precipitations. And due to the deep relationship between the environment and agriculture, the sector is more affected than other sectors by environmental instability caused by climate change. As example, long periods without rain, alternating with short but very intense rainfall, can cause soil impermeabilization. And an impermeable soil is more exposed to erosion, with the consequent loss of soil organic matter and also loss of soil biodiversity. At the same time, changes in rain pattern may cause water shortage, drought, and also deterioration of water quality. Increase of temperature may also cause exacerbation of plant pests and disease, and also can promote the arrival of new pests that are able to survive in the new climatic condition. Climate change affects also livestock sector in a negative way, since rising in temperature may cause heat stress that affects animal welfare and also increases animal mortality. And we have also that the increase of temperature may accelerate the growth of animal pathogens and parasites. All these effects have, of course, a negative impact on both health and the quality of agricultural production. But as said before by the President, we have that, like other sectors, agriculture is also a greenhouse gases emitter. Here are reported the total CO2 equivalent emission in 2019 for Europe. From the graph, we see that agriculture accounts for 10% of the total European greenhouse gases, of which the major are methane, mainly emitted from enteric fermentation of ruminants, and also from manure management, and the nitrous oxide, that is mainly due to the soil fertilization. So, for agriculture, it's crucial to adopt adopt strategies and solutions to quickly adapt to climate change, but at the same time, like other sectors, also agriculture needs to take action to lower its emission. And we must also consider that thanks to the photosynthesis process, plants are able to absorb CO2 from atmosphere and stock carbon in their biomass. So by promoting afforestation and reforestation, it's possible to remove big amount of CO2 from the atmosphere. And in the same way, we also cultivated crops can have a mitigating effect, mainly due to the accumulation and storage of carbon in their canopy and in the soil. And of course, we have that carbon storage capacity of an agricultural soil depends on the field management practice that are applied. So agriculture, while producing, is also able to mitigate part of its emissions. The European Common Agricultural Policy for 2023 and 2027 has identified 5 main contributions of agricultural sector to reduce its emissions. One is the implementation of mitigation technologies and of appropriated farming practices to reduce the direct greenhouse emission. Another is to encourage good soil management practice to increase and preserve organic carbon in the soil. The European policy also promotes the afforestation and the reduction of use of fossil fuel in agricultural practices, and also encourage the reduction of waste and loss of agricultural production. And now I will leave the floor to Maria Teresa to have a look of the effect of some good practices for mitigation and adaptation in agriculture. So please, Maria Teresa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Camilla. I hope you can hear me. I want to thank also the organization, and it's a pleasure to share with Camilla this contribution coming from the cluster Agri-Food. My specialization is, my skills are on livestock farming, so I will move the attention of the presentation to this field. And as Camilla said, the European policy is asking to the agricultural activity to contribute to the possibility to have a mitigation on greenhouse gas emission in Europe. And they give this word carbon farming as a word that summarizes the possibility to manage some practices able to support mitigation effect of agricultural on climate change. And this effect is possible thanks to the two processes Camilla explained us. The possibility to increase the amount of carbon dioxide accumulated in the field in terms of biomass, or better in terms of organic matter in the soil. And in the same time, have a reduction of the emission of gas emission coming from the livestock part of the farm. Speaking about the milk production, we are going to speak about this kind of production and carbon farming in the dairy sector. The largest emitters in this sector are, as Camilla said, enteric fermentation. This is the majority of the emission in the livestock due to the fermentation that happen in the digestive process of bovine and ruminants in general, where symbiosis between some microbe and the animal can digest the fiber that can be used by other animals. And it is the reason why ruminants can emit a lot of methane, but at the same time they are not in competition with human in the nutritive chain. The other big emitters in agricultural process are close to the nitrogen cycle. And for the livestock farm, it means manure storage and use as fertilizer, but also the use of fertilizer on crop. So these two big emitting process, enteric fermentation and manure use and management, represent inside the dairy farm a cycle, because we have to consider that usually in the dairy sector we have the use of manure and animal waste in general as soil improver and fertilizer, so they can this material can give back organic matter and carbon to the soil and give also nutrition. So if we use in a good way this the manure and the animal waste in general, we can save many quantity of chemical nitrogen. So it is very important to have this cycle, and this cycle happens inside the so-called forest system, where a forest system is an agricultural rotation where the fields are used to produce forage and feed for the barn. So in this cycle, we can have, manage some important best practice able to give more sustainability to the livestock production. The next, please, Camilla. We have different best practice. I show someone of this one, and this best practice, in order to be able to mitigate climate change, can be applied to the forest system, and they represent mainly the good use of nitrogen as fertilizer and good use of nitrogen in animal nutrition, and some other are regarding the air management and the feeding of the animal, and other part is regarding the animal waste management. For example, Governor Mammi spoke about the possibility given to some farm in Emilia-Romagna to have money in order to cover the stock, the storage of manure, and this is the best way to avoid ammonia emission and nitrous oxide emission, and something like this. But the next, please, Camilla. But some example I want to give you are on some results we had in a recent project, a live project called Forage for Climate, where a group of university and the CRPA studied the possibility to mitigate greenhouse gas emission in the dairy, co-dairy process. And in this case, this is an example of precision feeding, where it is possible to use in a better way some input inside the animal feeding. It is very, very important to be able to use in a good way the nitrogen, because if you are able to match the needs of the animal and the income they have from the forage and feed, we can avoid the excretion of nitrogen, the first source of ammonia and nitrous oxide. And the capacity to reduce and to match the needs of the animal and the nitrogen in the feed can reduce the excretion of nitrogen also about for about 20 or 30% in the core, and it is very, very important. The next, please. The next, okay. And another very important mitigation strategy in the co-breeding is to have more forage legume inside the forest system. And the reason is legumes, and alfalfa is the queen of the legume we use in Italy, is very, very important because they don't need fertilization, chemical fertilization. Alfalfa has a very big root system, and there is a lot of biomass that remain in the soil and can contribute to give organic matter and organic carbon in the soil. And very, very important, we avoid the plowing of the soil for many years, about 4 or 5 years. And this kind of best practice can reduce the emission, greenhouse gas emission connected with the milk production about 10%. The next, please. And another very important thing is about the use of alfalfa instead of soy. Is known in our field of activity, is very known that soybean represents a big source of carbon footprint of the milk, because we buy soy abroad, and this soy in general had a big quantity of greenhouse gas emitted connected with the deforestation. If you can see in this graph, we can see in light blue the carbon footprint of the soil for the part connected with the land use change, so deforestation, and the dark blue one is connected with the activity of the cultivation, only the cultivation. So it is immediately that if we have a big amount of soybean meal in the diet, bigger is the carbon footprint of the diet we provide to the core. So this thing is very, very important, and we are going to solve this problem in Parmigiano-Reggiano area. You know, in Emilia-Romagna, the most important product, dairy product, is Parmigiano-Reggiano PDO cheese. This cheese used about 90% of the milk produced in Emilia-Romagna, and the forage system of Parmigiano-Reggiano area is based on alfalfa. And this is the reason why we can have a very a quite low contribution by the forage to the diet of the animal, and this diet can be very more sustainable than the other one that use big quantity of soy. The next, please. But we want to speak not only about the emission, but like Camilla said, we want to speak about the possibility to stock carbon in in the soil as a mitigation strategy to be used in agriculture. And this strategy can also contribute to give some carbon credit also to the other sector. In the Forage for Climate project, we studied not only the emission of greenhouse gases by dairy process, but also the possibility to the carbon stock that we can have in the forest system connected with the breeding activity. And you can see we studied 46 farms, and we divided, we grouped this farm for the forest system. The first and the second one are the forest system we had in Parmigiano-Reggiano area, where the main forest system is based on from forages, and alfalfa is the most important forages. But in the second one, we have this is the traditional system of Parmigiano-Reggiano production, where alfalfa is associated to permanent meadow. In this area, in this kind of production, we use to feed the cow the production of very old meadow. This meadow can have between 25 and 1 century, and they are not ploughed, and the only thing they received as input is some manure as fertilizer. So in this kind of forage system, we can reach 100 tons of carbon, organic carbon, for each hectare of land. The other forest system the other one used in the population. The next, please. The next one. In this farm, we try to have an accounting of what is lost as carbon and what is take as carbon. And if we see the carbon footprint of the milk of the farm for each forest system, we can see that we can mitigate the emission about the 6% using best practices in the production system. But if we make an account and consider also the carbon we have stocked in the 4 year of the project, we can have a very more mitigated effect, because this process can produce carbon dioxide, but is able to sequester, to preserve a lot of carbon also in the soil. So this means that some forest system can be effective to mitigate the effect of animal breeding of product from animal sector. The same is made by Camilla and by Camilla and colleagues on orchard. This is a kiwi fruit orchard, and they account emission and absorption of the cycle for the first year of the cycle and the last year of the cycle, and you can see that is explained that an orchard can absolutely absorb the quantity of carbon dioxide emitted in this process. So we can have quite a balanced emission and absorption account. Only to give you some take-home message, please, Camilla. Well, we can try to summarize some topics from this lecture. First of all, we saw that climate change can produce several effect on the productivity of agricultural sector. And for now, in Europe, we saw increases in prices. In other parts of the world, it is a problem of food security. But anyway, we have some mitigation measures that can be used to avoid climate change due from agriculture. But we need to demonstrate and disseminate this best practice, because they are not so well known, and we need to go in this sense to have a climate smart agriculture. But we have to consider agricultural contribution to greenhouse gas emission is only about 10%, but in any way, we need to work on this as like other sector of the human activity. But we have to remember also that the soil and forest can represent carbon stock, very important carbon stock, and we have to preserve this peat, and in the same time work in order to increase with innovative techniques a use of livestock manure or other product, the carbon stock inside the soil, because it is represent a very, very important peat like forest and like other activity in the world. Thank you, and excuse me for this long exposure.
Okay, thanks to both Maria Teresa and Camilla for this presentation. So I ask if there is any question either from the floor or online. I think that those people who are watching us from far away can still make questions in writing that I can then report. So I don't see any questions. So just a small question on my side. I don't know who wants to reply, if it's Camilla or Maria Teresa. So it's well known that forests can absorb a great deal of CO2 that is emitted from different sources. I heard today in both of your presentations that also cultivated land can help in this respect. So I would like to ask you just a very which percentage would you say grossly that of carbon storage can be provided by cultivated land as opposed to forests? You choose who is replying.
Yes, it's difficult to say this because it depends on type of culture and crop. Because when we speak about crop, we speak about tomatoes, for example, or potatoes, but also of forest crop, such as wine, wineries, or actinidia, for example. So it depends of the crop. Probably less than the forest, obviously, because the problem is that we cultivate, for example, tomato, but then part of the CO2 absorbed by the crop has been considered as re-emitted when we consume the crop. So the balance is difficult to define well. But I think that the future research could be helped to better fix the real amount and the real contribution of cropland to the absorption of CO2.
Okay, thanks a lot for this reply. So the next speaker is Gianni Galaverna, who is professor at the University of Parma, who will talk about innovative approaches in agroecology to achieve resilience in Mediterranean countries. Please, Gianni.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and good afternoon to everyone. I wish to thank also the organizer for this opportunity to talk to you today about some innovative agroecological approaches focused on cereal production. I'm from the University of Parma, so as we already heard, Parma is one of the towns in the Emilia-Romagna region, which is famous for its cultural heritage, for being also at the center of what is known as the Italian Food Valley, rich of several PDO products, but also important food industries, and highly ranked universities and research centers, mainly focused on, with a specific expertise in the field of food, the food sector and food science. We are also the headquarters of the European Food Safety Authority in Parma, so we are an highly food-oriented environment in which, of course, cereal production is one of the most important aspects related to the production of pasta, bread, and baked goods. And as we know, of course, also from the introduction, cereals are very important for human diet. About 35% of human calories come from rice, wheat, and maize. And the production increased a lot in the last 80 years. But the cultivated area was not grown in proportion. And indeed, the increase in yield is mainly associated with an improvement of the production technology, to the selection of highly yielding varieties, and of course to the intensification of agriculture. This point is for sure one of the most important, as intensive grain production systems has started to show some limits. They are based on monoculture, so on the breeding of elite crop lines, highly adapted to the homogeneous cropping conditions of modern agriculture, which of course needs high chemical inputs in terms of fertilizer or pesticides, and ample labor is needed to prepare the land. This can lead, of course, to the problems of water contamination, of the reduction of biodiversity, not only associated with the application of pesticides, but also with the exploitation of, with the cultivation of genetically similar plants. And above all, of course, we have the problem of the climate change, in particular in the increasing the annual variability, as stated before by the other presenters. And this could lead, of course, to the stagnation in yields and the problem related to the biotic and abiotic stresses, in particular by CO2 increase. For example, soil contamination is an open issue. In a recent paper, it was claimed that 83% of the EU soils contain one or more pesticide residues, and 58% contain mixtures. Of course, low level, we are lucky, but we don't know, for example, the effects of residue mixture, both on the environment and on human health. So this is a very important aspect to be dealt with in the future. And the other impact we already heard about is the impact of agriculture on the environment. So in terms of global greenhouse gas emission, and in particular also to the global freshwater withdrawals, which is very important for agriculture. But on the other hand, there is also the impact of the climate change on agriculture. As an example, if you compare the maximum summer temperature and the maximum winter temperature in Emilia-Romagna region in the period between the 60s and the 90s, and with the period of the last 25 years, you can see by the color that in the case of the last 25 years, the temperature is very higher than in the previous period. And so this led to a lot of problems related to productivity loss, to the invasion of alien species, and of course to new emerging risks also from the biological point of view, microbiological point of view, and it threatens, of course, the resilience of our agricultural systems. Resilience to climate change has been one of the topic of one recent publication which aroused a lot of debate about the possible not resilient capability of our wheat production in Europe. And we need for sure a set of cultivars with diverse responses to weather conditions. And it seems that current breeding programs are not sufficiently prepared for this uncertainty and variability in climate. And the last but not least problem is related to the soil erosion, because of course this can decrease the organic matter content and nutrient depletion, and also the alteration and destruction of the soil structure, which is very important, also of course at the end to lead to a decrease in production. So within this context, sustainable agriculture is for sure one of the most important aspects to look for. Precision farming could be, of course, very useful, and we have to check for different approaches also, sometimes also opposite approaches, that of agroecology, which is based on the preservation of agroecosystem services, to the preservation and restoration of soil function, and of course based on rotation patterns. This is particularly suited, for example, for smallholder farmers. But of course, we have also to rely on biotechnology, because it is for the future. It is very important to use also these approaches. For sure, we need to improve crop diversity and biodiversity, and to better exploit the soil microbiota. So within this context, recently we are coordinating an European project which is called Change Up, funded by the Partnership for Research and Innovation in Mediterranean Area, the Prima Foundation, in collaboration with the Research Council for Agriculture and Economics in Italy, and with the other partners from North African countries and France. The objective is to redesign the innovative farming system, in particular aim to be more resilient to climate change, and able also to ensure food security, and in particular a sustainable income for farmers. And this technology is based on two complementary approaches, which is based on the use of what is known as evolutionary population of cereals and on new perennial grains. The objectives of the project is, of course, to assess the benefits of integrating these innovative cropping system, in particular for low input and organic agriculture, and to assess, of course, the agronomic performance, in particular in farmer fields, so in real environment, to assess the safety and quality of the agricultural products obtained, and of course the economic, social, and environmental impacts of the approaches. What are evolutionary population? They belong to the so-called evolutionary genetic improvement, which is based on the use of mixtures instead of single variety for sowing, and so mixing seeds of different varieties of the same species leads to a heterogeneous material in the field. Once planted, of course, the plant can cross during the grow, and if you collect the seeds in the second and third generation, you can obtain also what are known as evolutionary populations, which are obtained practically by mixing the seed of different variety obtained by crossing a certain number of varieties in all possible combinations. So which kind of characteristics they have? They possess, of course, a high degree of within crop genetic diversity, and they hold a higher buffering capacity towards various abiotic and biotic stresses. They are particularly suited to low input and organic agriculture because they can afford good and stable yields, even when the availability, for example, of resources decreases, or when climatic conditions become extreme. And for example, in the past, they have already proved their efficiency in reducing some biotic stresses, such as in reducing powdery mildew in barley and in reducing rice blast in China, for example. And a recent meta-analysis of about 120 scientific studies show that the total yield of wheat blends in comparison with the monovarieties, of course, in the same conditions, records an average increase more or less of 3.5%, which can rise to 6.2 in the presence of significant biotic stress. This, of course, is particularly evident when you don't use inputs, so you don't use pesticides. And this is due to this heterogeneity inside the field, also, for example, based on the uneven height of the different plants, on the different resistance characteristics of the different plants. And so there is a sort of multiple response inside the field to the different stresses. What are the advantages for the organic sector? But this, for sure, is a low-cost evolutionary breeding methods, which exploit in particular the genotype per environment interactions. So it is aimed at obtaining different locally adapted varieties. And the climate change adaptation is based on the fact that in one particular year, for example, in some conditions, there is a variety with a higher fitness which grows better. The following year, if the conditions are changed, another variety could have a higher fitness and so grows better than the others. And so this can lead after some years to a yield stabilization and sometimes also an increase in the yield. And it appears also that this kind of material is able to control weeds better than the uniform varieties. So this is another important point when you don't use pesticides, of course. And the other approach is based on another totally different kind of species, which are new perennial grains. They are obtained by hybridization or domestication of wild relatives, which are able to regrow after harvest. And so with this kind of material, you can reduce the need for tillage. And there is, of course, a protection of soil against erosion because of the soil cover. And there is also an increase in soil carbon storage content because there is a reduction of the oxidation of the soil organic matter. And this would be very useful also because it can be cultivated, they can be cultivated also in marginal lands, and they can be used also in a circular economy view as forage or, for example, for biofuel production. What are the main characteristics? They have an extended root systems, a very extended root systems, which give them a higher competitive ability against weeds, and they are more effective at capturing, for example, nutrients and water. The problem, of course, is today that their yield is still much lower than that of annual crops. But there are several examples, in particular in Italy, of some new genotypes, which are obtained also by crossing the wild species with Triticum aestivum, the bread wheat. And these are, for example, the material we are testing in the project, and they are very interesting for the possibility to grow in different environments, but also to increase the yield of the final products. This kind of approach is not isolated, I mean, because in the last 10 years, there were a lot of projects in the European Union aimed at testing these new solutions. And of course, organic agriculture is one of the most important aspects in the new EU Farm to Fork strategy. There were, of course, some barriers, and in particular, mainly regulatory barriers, because, for example, mixtures and populations are so-called organic heterogeneous material. So normally, seed legislation in several countries is based on the principle of variety registration and seed certification, of course, and this should meet distinctness, uniformity, and stability requirement. But in 2014, there was an implementing decision from the European Commission for a temporary experiment at union level to test for the production and for the marketing of these new species, of these new mixed species. And indeed, after some years, in the last regulation of the European Union for organic agriculture, there is an article dealing with organic heterogeneous material, which are material which presents common phenotypic characteristics, but is characterized by a high level of genetic and phenotypic diversity between the different individuals. And so it is the plant group which is represented, And now it is possible not only to cultivate them, but also to market them. And indeed, in Italy, for example, there are already some registered Italian populations in different regions of soft wheat, durum wheat, but also of barley. One of them is BioSquare, which was developed here during a project within the rural development plan of the Emilia-Romagna region. And it is very interesting also to test the technological properties of this new material, because of course this is very important for the industrial transformation and the application and the real application. And indeed, for example, we tested the workability of this flour obtained by this mixture. They present good structure and of the loaves, for example, for the production of bread, which is comparable with the normal modern varieties such as Bologna, for example. And they show good nutritional quality, and they are very well appreciated by consumers. So it is some starting data which is very interesting for the future applications. For new perennial grains, the situation is still complex, but for example, in the US, there is already a marketed variety which is called Kernza, obtained by the domestication of wheatgrass, which is these wild relatives, Tinopirum intermedium. And in change-up, in the project, we are testing the new perennial wheat lines developed in Italy in order to test for the nutritional quality and technological properties. But the first results are interesting, and of course, the future is to find out the possibility to apply them to the production of the most important baked products. So to end this brief presentation, and some very important messages are related to the fact that we need to carry out research in different climates and conditions in order to check for the viability and scope of these new products. So this is one of the topics faced by the project, because we are comparing France, Italy, and North Africa, for example. It is important also to establish breeding programs in different parts of the world, because we have to take into consideration the different climate conditions and the different ability to adapt to the different climatic conditions. Of course, taking always in consideration the needs of farmers, which is, of course, improving the quality and the yield, and also the markets and the economic assessment in order to be able to sustain the farmer income. And one last thing is also probably it would be helpful to have management guidelines and the setup of a network that facilitates, in particular, long-term experiments, because, of course, we need long-term experiments, and sometimes the projects are too short to have this kind of final results. Anyway, if you are interested, of course, stay tuned with the Change Ag project, and I wish to thank you very much for your kind attention.
Okay, thanks a lot for this very, very informative presentation. So I'm asking again if there is any questions from the floor here, or from the people that are looking online. I have a question that I'm sure you can provide the audience with very good explanation. At the beginning, you said a very important keyword, which is use of biotechnology, use of genetic editing. I'm sure that you are aware that is something that that the general public is usually very afraid of. So I think that it will be useful for our audience to have your opinion on that.
Yes, I think that dealing with all these kind of troubles we have for the future, we don't have to exclude some possibilities. Gene editing, of course, is a very hot topic, because it means that you have the possibility to modify the genetic traits of an organism. it is relatively different from GMO, which probably is one of the most threatening idea in the normal public. I think that probably with gene editing, we have the possibility, for example, to develop new plant species in a very short time, 1-2 years, in comparison with the traditional, for example, breeding program, which lasts for 5, 6, or 10 years. So it could be one of the possibilities we have, and we don't have to have fear of this technology, because the most important thing, in my opinion, is transparency. If you are able to be transparent, to communicate and to share the information in a good way, sometimes the scientists are not so able to do so. This could be one of the options we have. So, I mean, I'm perfectly aware that, for example, agroecology and gene editing are on the opposite side, but I think we have to explore all the different possibilities we have. Otherwise, probably the future could be very difficult for the agricultural production system. So it is a matter of fact that we have to be transparent and to transfer to the public and to the consumer the real issue and the real consistency of these approaches.
Okay, thank you for this, also for these last issues that you addressed. We have a question here from the floor.
Thank you, Gianni, for your very, very nice presentation. And I'm wondering whether you also consider the opportunity not only for using agroecology or gene editing and other biotechnology for improving resilience of crops. But what about the possibility to play in a nutritional or a technological ground? Let's say, for example, by reducing amount of some negative bioactive compounds or peptides which are dangerous, for example, for celiacs, and making, for example, new varieties which are more healthy friendly for humans, for example, not only for climate resilience, but also for making varieties which conciliate both sustainability and human health, just to make a one health planet. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Francesco, for the question. Of course, this is a very important point. Indeed, I think one of the most important aspects, also in general, considering breeding programs, it appears that in the last years, breeding is mainly devoted to obtain material for the industrial transformation. Sometimes other aspects have been not so deeply considered, and I think that we have, of course, the possibility to improve the nutritional quality, the safety also, for example, in terms of resistance to the accumulation of mycotoxins in soil, for example. So we have to exploit this possibility in order, of course, parallel to counteract the climate change, in order to, of course, assure good production and good yield. But on the same side, we have now the possibility also, because, for example, genome of wheat has been decoded in the last years, to have information on how to select new varieties which are more nutritious and maybe also avoiding some negative effect in some specific part of the population. So I agree totally with you. This could be absolutely one of the most important and interesting things for science to follow in the future.
Okay, thanks again for your presentation. We have to move to the last presentation of this first section of the workshop. The speaker will be Marga Vintges, who is program manager of the cluster Greenport West Holland. Is a cluster from the Netherlands that is collaborating with the agri-food cluster, and which has basically the same mission in the Netherlands that we have in Italy and in the Emilia-Romagna region. So Marga will talk about the sustainable approach of greenhouse horticulture, which is an important sector, we understand, for the Netherlands. Please, Marga. Sorry, Marga, we cannot hear you. Just a few seconds.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Now it's okay. Go ahead, please.
Thank you again, Sandro and Fuzzi, and apologize that I'm not in Dubai today, which was planned, but not possible at the end because of the COVID rules. Thank you also to the former speakers. Very much I thought why we are working together with our clusters. And I will touch some of the same issues. So I'm glad I can't speak to you now. Please, the next slide. Well, these are the factor figures of the Dutch horticulture, and as you can see, it's really an important sector in the Netherlands. You know probably all that we are very much a country which exports a lot of horticulture and agricultural products. What you see here is our export of food, but we also export a lot of supplies and technologies on horticulture and food production, which I will mention later on, especially more. Thank you. Next slide. Well, since horticulture is in the Netherlands such an important sector, 9 years ago the Dutch government started the top sector policy with 9 top sectors. Agri-food is of course one of them, but horticulture and propagation material is also a special top sector in the Netherlands. We have a top sector agenda, which is about more and better production with less, of course with less use of space, energy, etc. Food safety and food security, health and well-being. We produce not only food but also green products for your environment like flowers, trees, and cooperating in the value chain. Important what you see here in this slide is the meaning of the crossover. So not our own top sector is important, but the cooperation with the other top sectors, with the top sector of water, with the top sector of energy, for example, and of course with the top sector of high tech in this time with all this digitalization, etc. For the top sector, we have a special problems we have to deal with, of course, economic development, but one of the most important problems in the Netherlands, which is a small country with a lot of people, is spatial planning. And that's also how our policy started, and I'll tell you on that later on. Please, next slide. Okay, well, the Dutch horticulture is organized in Greenports, and those Greenports, most of them have all experiences that are necessary within the Greenport, especially in West Holland. We have everything. We have propagation, material, and seed selections. We have the technique, we have the crop management, the logistics very much with the Port of Rotterdam in the neighborhood. And we have a real good knowledge of environment. So that's what we have in our West Holland Greenport. Next slide, please. And here you can see our Greenports, regional horticlusters, Greenports, 7 Greenports, and some satellites. And those are organized by law, because there was not enough space in the Netherlands for our horticulture. So there has become a legislation that said in this area, horticulture can stay without the pressure of, for example, using the space for other things like living or housing or highways, etc. It was really an important discussion in the Netherlands some 30 years ago. And it's still, in the Netherlands, you have to know every square meter, it's decided where it's for. So if it's for nature, it's for nature, but it's all by law. So that's also for the horticulture clusters. Every space of horticulture is written down. So we have these 7 horticulture clusters. Next slide, please. And here you can see our cluster, which is the Greenport West Holland. It's the largest one, especially with the greenhouses. If you watch the picture of our part of the Netherlands, you see those white spots. Those are all greenhouses. And of course, you see the Port of Rotterdam. Next slide, please. Well, again, our greenhouse cluster is it's the largest of the world for glass. It won't stay the largest, I'm certain. And you see our members of our Greenport, but only the large industries are member. So we also work for non-members. The membership is not obliged to be helped. But you also see a lot of knowledge partners and, of course, governments like the region and, for example, the municipality of Westland. And next one, please. Well, a small history about our region, which is only a part of this one, but this is the western part of the Netherlands. And what you can see is Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague. And what happened is the growth of these cities very fast. And what you also can see is that the growth of the greenhouse production, the orange spots on this map, and the growth happened to come because we wanted to feed the cities. That was what the start was of our greenhouse production. And it's also very much in our goal now, but I'll tell you later on that. Next slide, please. Because here you see our goal now is feeding and greening mega cities. And you saw in the figures and facts that we export a lot of food, but we only export within Europe, especially to Germany. But we want to export our knowledge and supplies to the whole world, so that in the whole world, all those large cities that become and are growing can be fed. So that's our goal. So next century there will be 11 billion people to feed, and they all will live in, or most of them will live in metropolitan areas. And it's important that they have good food, which is good produced and which has also a good logistic, that it it's from farm to fork, what you say. Of course, also the logistics are important then. What you see is that we are also busy with 12 of the 17 global goals. And well, more people, better food, less impact. That's what we are busy with, and we want to make this possible for the whole world. So not only our own production, but also to show the world how to produce everywhere in the world. So where it's cold or where it's hot, you can produce food within greenhouses. Next slide, please. Well, and that's the result of protected cultivation. What you can see here is, for example, the tomato production. In open field, the kilogram per square meter, or at the end in closed greenhouses where everything is totally digital and shown, and we have all knowledge of all plants, of the whole system. And the difference is quite big, as you can see, for the production. So if you have to feed cities with 20 million of people, you need this sort of production area. And that's what we want to show the world. Of course, parts of Africa don't need greenhouses, so, or not this sort of greenhouses. So we want to give the world the knowledge and the situation they need. Next one, please. And for example, when you have closed greenhouses, you can make much better use of biological crop protection. Well, this is just an example. But for example, in our vegetables, we only normally use biological crop protection, so they are all clean. We try to use less chemicals in flower and plant production, which is quite a struggle that I have to tell you. And next one, please. And well, of course, in greenhouses in the Netherlands, we use a lot of energy, and that's the reason that we were the first sector that uses cogeneration much earlier than other industries. And you can here see in this slide what happened if we wouldn't use cogeneration. And the interesting thing of cogeneration is that you use the gas with a 98% of efficiency, because we also use the electricity and the carbon dioxide. I'll come back on that. So, but it's not enough anymore to use cogeneration. Next slide, please. This is a cogenerator in one of our big greenhouses. Next slide, please. Because we also want to try to store our warmth with thermal storage in aquifers. So in summer we can store our warmth, and in winter we can use it. Together with the sun and the cogeneration together will be much more efficient in future. So and it's already used a lot in our greenhouses, but they also need to be closed, of course. And next one, please. And we are lucky because there is a lot of thermal energy in our bottom in the southwest of the Netherlands, so we can use the geothermal energy, and we have a lot of geothermal drilling projects now in our region to get warmth. Next one, please. But as was already told by Camilla, she mentioned the carbon storage capacity of crops, but it's more interesting. Crops really need carbon dioxide to grow much faster and to much better. So we use already carbon dioxide from our gas production and greenhouse cogeneration for several decennium. But when we use, for example, thermal energy, we need to have carbon dioxide coming from elsewhere. So there is a pipeline in the Netherlands which comes from the port of Rotterdam and which sends pure carbon dioxide to our region and to all our greenhouses, so that they can use the carbon dioxide, which is not sent then to the air directly, but is used in our greenhouses, which is of course much better. Next slide, please. Well, that was about the energy used for warmth, but of course we are getting over to LED lighting, which is much more energy efficient also. So that's what's happening in the Netherlands in our greenhouses with the energy question. Next slide, please. But more important, the crop per drop, the innovation on water use in greenhouses, and if you don't produce in the ground, which is of course not possible if you have a biological or organic production, you can recycle the water. And what you see is what happened with the liters water per kilogram tomato. It decreased enormously when you produce in the closed greenhouses. And of course, it was already told, I think, by Sandro Fuzzi, that open field production also innovated and reduced their water use for 40%. But as you can see, the water reduction here, use reduction here within the greenhouse is much more. Next slide, please. It's done by a water reuse system, for example, so you can use the water every time, and you can only put a little bit of rainwater extra in the circulation. So it's helping a lot in the water supply system. Next slide, please. And we have also water storage cellars, so that we can use the rainwater, which is much better than the water coming from the water production. So that's also to keep the water in our system. Next slide, please. Well, then, of course, there is already talk about farm to fork and about the necessity of being more sustainable. I would like to discuss also with my former speaker the importance of gene editing. Gianni Galaverna already told about this. So we need together a lobby for better help within the CAP, for example, because the farm to fork is not really strategic for the horticulture, not for the open field horticulture, not for the greenhouse horticulture. It's more about livestock, it's more about arable, which is also, of course, very important. But I think the nutrition security comes from vegetables and fruits, and we need more influence, I think, in Europe. In the CAP, the word horticulture is not even mentioned. They call it small crops. And I think we can work together on that, because also the horticulture crops give a lot of information and innovation to arable crops, for example. So we are working together in our cluster strategy, and I hope we can also work together in Europe to help the European people with the knowledge on nutrition, that they have a healthy diet, vegetables and fruit, and well, it's all delivered by horticulture, and we would try to give our European horticulture system, which is not only coming from the Netherlands, but also, of course, coming from Emilia-Romagna and from our friends in your cluster, to the whole world to use and to give them a really healthy diet also. One slide next, please, which is important. Well, of course, you all had talked about. Oh, I don't see my slides anymore. Sorry? I don't see my slides anymore. Is that true? Do you see my slides?
We can see your slides, so you can go ahead.
Okay, well, I wanted to tell you, of course, about our knowledge institutes. In the western part of the Netherlands, we have a lot of knowledge institutes. We have 3 campuses that within our Greenport, which are all really about horticulture. The campus in Westland, which has a vocational school. It has a laboratory on greenhouses and an exhibition part, and there was some possibilities to have meetings there. Then there is the campus with the Wageningen University, the campus Oostland, and there is a campus on logistics in the south. And in the middle we have The Hague, Rotterdam, and don't forget the technical universities and technical institutes of Delft. So we all work together in what we call the Greenport Horticampus. So that's our knowledge system within our Greenport, and we would like to work together and to cooperate with your knowledge system, of course. Thank you so much. I think next slide. I think the horticulture in Europe is very important. We have gold in our hands. It's economically important. It's important for the development of the world on a sustainable way of making food. And if you want to know more, next 2 days, tomorrow in the afternoon and on Tuesday, there are also meetings in the Dutch pavilion on the Expo. So please visit the Dutch pavilion and you will hear more about horticulture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marga. Very, very interesting presentation. And just looking at your last slide, thank you for also underlining the need of knowledge transfer, as was introduced earlier also by Francesco Capozzi. It's important not just that we develop technology, we develop knowledge, but also that we transfer knowledge to the production system. I have a few very quick questions. Then I see if somebody else has other questions. I have seen from the complexity of the system that you have presented that probably your network is made of big companies, not just small producers. Also, I understand that if you work in enriched CO2 atmosphere, so I wanted you also to say something about this. And the last very quick question is if some of the greenhouse system that is part of your system is producing through hydroponic culture, so culture in water. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sandro, for your questions. We not only have large companies, we have especially large companies on the production of supplies, but not only, we have also a lot of startups and grow-ups. But of course, especially on the production of the greenhouses itself, those are large companies, yes, certainly. And we have some large production companies, but they are still all SMEs, and mostly family companies, but growing and growing fast. Yes, that's true. But we also have a lot of smaller companies, and we work for them as well. And even all our smallest greenhouses, they all use the co-generator. And the larger ones, they use the geothermic, and they make the geothermic driven projects. So that was your question about the companies, I think. About the carbon dioxide enriches greenhouses, yes. Well, they all are to 2 ppm, I think. And but we are doing some measures and research on what is the optimum of the carbon dioxide, because we learned to put a lot of carbon dioxide into the greenhouse because we had enough coming from our co-generator. So then we used all what was coming out of co-generators, but now we have to use external carbon dioxide, which costs some money, of course. There is a lot of research done to know what is the optimum of the use of carbon dioxide. And in the future, you will see that carbon dioxide coming from the industry near to the port will be stored in the earth, and only the part that will be used by, for example, the industry of beers and Coca-Cola, and from the industry of greenhouse horticulture, that the only one will be that won't be storage. So it's a difficult discussion, and we need to know the optimum of use. So that's a lot of research on that now. And of course, our Port of Rotterdam is trying to get a carbon dioxide hub with getting all the dioxide from whole Western Europe into the port and to storage it there. So we have a lot of cooperation, of course, also with our Port of Rotterdam. And then about hydroponic, yes, of course we have a lot of hydroponic companies also. Although it's quite difficult, lettuce is done in hydroponic mostly, but tomatoes not yet, although we did some research on it, and the taste of the tomato was really terrific, but it's quite difficult to organize it. So, but it gives less of waste, for example, so it's an important development to have a hydroponic production. We produce mostly in, not in the ground, but for example, in different sorts of, I can't get the word now, but...
Of substrates.
Yes, that's the word. For example, in coconut or something like that.
Yeah.
But hydroponics gives a less of waste, of course, so it's important. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thanks again, Marga, for your presentation and for taking the time to be with us today, even if you are not present. And we move now to the second section, which deals with transformation, transport, and trade within the food system. The first speaker could not be present for a last-minute problem. So the next two presentations in this section are from private company. The first one will be from Rosa Prati of CAVIRO. CAVIRO is a wine company that is active in a circular approach way of cultivation with the valorization also of byproducts. So Rosa Prati will give us an overview of how this whole system works within CAVIRO. So Rosa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for this invitation, and thank you for Marga in order to know the importance to the agriculture system and also of all our growers. And that is the base of our company, because CAVIRO is a large company in Italy, the most important company in order to valorize the wine and also the byproduct from the grower. We was born in Emilia-Romagna Region, and the mission of CAVIRO is to valorize the product of our wine grower. But the importance of the vision of the foundation was the transformation also of all kinds of byproducts in new products. Now we name that the circular economy, but in the past the mission was we don't waste nothing. And this is our mission also today. So now we are three groups identified with different kind of mission, because in CAVIRO SCA we have all the transformation, the packing, and the selling of the wine. In CAVIRO Extra we have the transformation in innovation system and also in new research in order to add value in all kind of byproduct. And then with the necessary importance to the value chain in Elomondo, we represent the transformation of all the waste in energy and also in new fertilizers. So now we increase a lot our number of workers in 77 production sites, and with an important increasing also in annual turnover. And this is from 65% of wine, 20% of noble product, and now 15% of bioenergy. In this time, the 10% of the wine in Italy, and more or less 12,000 wine growers. So that is most important in order to evaluate after our systematability. And in this case, this idea, this mission, this future strategy come from a good group of workers, of members in this kind of team. And this is confirmed from the top job in 2020 and also in 2021. But not only with a an award, but also with more certification, in particular the ethical certification, in order to evaluate all the part of our food chain, and now recently the Equalitar certification for all the transformation group with a clear management system for sustainability. Finally, with the goal in environment and enterprises, we received the best management sustainable development with the combination of environmental, economics and social aspects, and that is most important for the future. So, this is the first part in order to explain better our system of circular economy. But I think that sustainability is inside our basis, because the definition of a wine growers cooperative comply completely the term of sustainability, because we have to manage and conserve better all our system for the future generation. That is the important idea when a small group of growers founded CAVIRO in order to transform and to sell better the product and transform all with a perfect idea of circularity. But starting, we come from the wineries, and it is most important because I said we are in 7 regions in Italy, where we have the different kind of exposure, different climate, and also cultivation method, in order to obtain the better quality of each kind of grape. Then, this grape come in the cellars, where we transform that in order to confirm each kind of different quality, in order to conserve better all the byproduct. But the wine is the most important product in our transformation, that is clear, and this is in a large quantity of knowledge, because we have over more 50 penologists. They work together, they tasted the wine together in order to confirm the quality and prepare the next one transformation, in order to increase year by year our production and our quality. But with all the byproduct, we generate a large quantity of waste, and we have a critical mass. That is most important, because all the transformation in circular system come from a critical mass. That is the key point of the transformation of biomass. We have a lot of leaves, we have a lot of mark, and really it is a mountain. And in this transformation, we can obtain a lot of noble products. From the first one is alcohol, then tartaric acid, oenoxanil, polyphenol, and then also the transformation of mass. But we don't stop our transformation here. We transform also the waste of this process in our other kind of product. In particular, we transform that in bioenergy. The first is the biomethane. And then with the sludge we obtain from this transformation, we obtain also the natural fertilizer for the growth. That is our system, but it is a real closed system in order to increase the quality and the health of the soil. And time by time, our growers know that this kind of product and use this kind of product for the better increasing of quality. So that is our knowledge in order to explain better the sustainability. But in order to conserve all our food chain, it is most important pass through the economic sustainability, because in that moment we are a lot of workers inside CAVIRO. But it is most important also all the other company and also all our growers. So we have a most important strength in this point. And we like to conserve that with a marketing plan very strong in order to conserve the first point in Italy for the wine seller. We have in that moment more of 80 destination countries for our wine, and also we have a good revenue in this not so easy year. Then the social sustainability. It is important also for the grower, it is important also for our consumer, and also for all the part of the chain. Finally, with a large company, we produce a lot of waste in the normal idea, but we transform all. And also, recently, we transform also the biomethane production in a system where we recover all the biomethane and all the CO2 in the production per year. So we preserve more over 100,000 tons per year of CO2. And we use that also in beverage and in pharmaceutical use. Then we transform all our byproducts in energy. And then we are going to improve year by year the transformation in the using of water in order to saving water year by year. Now we are in the 30% of the saving of water we use per year. So there are the SDG goal in order to confirm where we are in compliance. Obviously, the point 3, in order to confirm for all our system good health, then affordable and clean energy, because a very important quantity of energy we use year by year. And in this case, we can sustain our production only if with our waste we transform that in energy. Then the work increasing of economic growth, the industry and innovation. But it is most important the responsible consumption and production, and also the climate action, because this year in Italy is a continuous spring, and we don't have any quantity of water for our plant. That is an important modification in our climate, and that is an action in innovation most important for the future. If you want to see all our identification and innovation activities, you can read online our sustainability report. In few days we have the 3rd edition, and in each of them we report our history, our transformation, and now in the actual preparation, our future vision in order to complete our sustainability system. Then, because our company it isn't so easy to explain, you can match where our production work in pair with other kind of production, and we have an online magazine in order to explain where is the key point of all our system. But in order to complete the trip, we present also the importance of the group, 10% more or less in Italy, a lot of destination and a lot of consumer. And here there are all kind of wine we have and we sell together the world. Around the world, sorry. Finally, our main brand, the most famous is Tavernello, and also the main brand of trade. The first one is Leonardo da Vinci. It is most important for us because with the mind of Leonardo, we would like to improve the innovation in the wine system and in the wine world. But go on, why we are so famous with Tavernello? Because Tavernello, also today, in the top 10 world of wine brand, is in the 9th position. And it is most important because upper there are only big family brands. And Tavernello is the one. It is only one product and not the group of family brands. So you can see the enormous quantity of wine we sell year by year. But inside of the transformation of byproduct for the circularity, we recover in the extra plant 500 tons of byproduct and waste per year. That is most important because we transform all of that quantity in new kind of product, finally in energy. But that is most important because all the transformation is from bio-based product. So, CAVIRO Extra is the factory where we transform and prepare all the kind of innovative system. Alcohol, must, tartaric acid, and finally energy. Bioenergy is most important because we are completely self-sufficient for thermal and also electric energy. Then we are going to increase year by year the production of fertilizer in order to complete our circular system and satisfy all our growers. So it is most important in that moment because with all this system we can reduce also the cost in our company and also the cost for the final product. But we would like to improve day by day our process, and then at the next step is the transformation of the biomethane in NGL. Also, we are going to improve the plant of natural fertilizer in order to use all the sludge from the biodigestion and we would like to obtain a new kind of fertilizer from the anaerobic digestion. But all these points are possible only with an innovation system. This is my work in the group. But only an overview. We work in all points of our circle, from the wine grower to enological innovation, from the cooperation with the University of Bologna in particular, but also with other universities in Italy, and finally with Agri-Food, in order to improve our process day by day. And then we are going to cooperate with Tetra Pak and other universities in order to obtain new packaging more sustainable than today. Finally, the other part is all the part for environmental circular economy. In order to reducing the environmental impact, the soil preservation, the transformation in bioplastic, and also in transport and logistics. That is a most important point for our LCA. Thank you very much. I hope that is clear, and we are at your disposal for the questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rosa, for this very, very complete explanation of how CAVIRO works. I'm sure that people have taken notes of where they can find more information about your company, and I think that the most interesting take-home message is that a successful industrial operation not always comes at the expenses of sustainability and of environment, and this is something that is very valuable from your presentation. Okay, so thanks again, and we move to the last presentation of the second section, which will be given by Marco Campagna, who is the Innovation Director of CRPA, which is a leading Italian company in the catering sector, and he will explain us how the use of big data and artificial intelligence can provide a more efficient and sustainable food distribution and production. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi and good afternoon, everybody. Let me begin with a brief introduction of CRPA, the company where I'm working for the last 2 years as a strategy and innovation director. CRPA is a leading company in Italy in the collective catering sector, with a strong position in education and healthcare sector. We developed a turnover of nearly 700 million euro, and we are able to employ 13,000 people across Italy, Netherlands, and Belgium. Our mission, our vision is highlighted by the claim "Feed the Future." So we believe that developing our business, we always need to keep an eye on what is coming next, because this is important for our clients, but this is important also for the environment where we live. So today I'm going to talk about the role of artificial intelligence in food waste control, how we are using in CRPA in a couple of projects that we're going to cover in the next few slides. So let's start from a number, which is really simple but impactful. 1/3 of the total food produced worldwide is wasted. It's a very huge number if we think, and maybe it's not covered and shared in the news as it should be, as many other information about greenhouses, gas, or some other stuff due to these topics are covered. In fact, if we go deeper in the number, we understand that nearly 10% of the greenhouse gas came from this waste of food, and it accounts globally of more than 1 trillion euros. So it's not something that we can say okay, it's not there. It's a global problem. It's a European problem, but it's a problem of all the countries across the world, and is impacting all the, let's say, the value chain, especially production, processing, and delivery. So all the area where chilled food is operating. So coming to what we can do to fight this food waste, there are many different strategies, from composing to industrial usage, from animal and human feed as a second usage, I would say. But on top of that, the most impactful strategy is prevention. So this is a strategy that can allow you to have a good impact on the environment, but also on your profit and loss. Because prevention, most of the time, means that you can reduce your cost. And again, linking to what has been said just before my section, it's a way to do something which is good for the environment, but also for your operation, which usually is a good strategy, because it means it's sustainable both on the hand of the environment, but also in terms of the profit and loss. And usually company, when they are able to find this kind of mix, they are able also to carry on in a productive way the action that they found. So, sorry. Coming to the two projects I'm going to cover today, let's start with demand forecasting. So, let's say we have across all the Italian peninsula sort of 1,200 kitchens widespread in all the territory. And our logistic footprint works with the central warehouse, who is delivering the goods, let's say 80% of the total goods, to the single kitchens, more or less every day, with the transportation going from the platform to the final kitchen. Before we were using artificial intelligence, we used to manage the demand, the forecast of the demand of this stock, basically with a very manual process. For this reason, we were able to focus only on the top SKUs, some 5–6% of the total SKUs, with a very basic calculation, working on previous month consumption and other simple calculations. Here in the chart you can see a sort of correlation where we match the different SKU demand with a dynamic model. Let's try to make an example which can make this chart more clear. You can imagine, for example, that temperature is a very important driver in the consumption. When temperature is becoming warmer, you see an increase of fresh vegetables and fruits consumption. And for example, when you know that when you sell hamburgers, you're gonna sell mayonnaise and ketchup as well. So this kind of thoughts and of evidences has been, let's say, put in a big data model that is developing a sort of, let's say, algorithm which is able to drive the forecast in a dynamic way, an automatic way. So we let's say, develop an automation reordering system, which is basically now covering all the 100% of the SKU. So we are able to address any single SKU with this method in a very efficient way, because everything is produced by the big data. So our role becomes more a sort of check and control to assess if the proposal is correct, but it's really very efficient and effective. The impact of this change is really satisfying for us. We have seen a big increase in forecast accuracy, more than 50%, which at the end delivers a decrease in stock in terms of value and volume, and at the end of the day, a saving, because we have less cash invested in stocks, and also less goods that are gonna expire because we have, let's say, lowered the level of the stock. Second project we are delivering with the artificial intelligence is called Plan-It. As you see from the name, from the label, is a mix of planning, eat, and also it reminds the word plant, because at the end of the day, the aim is to help saving the planet or not hurting too much, let's say. Here, what is the key insight? In this project, we are trying to address the food waste produced in the kitchen. And first disclosure is that an industrial kitchen is not so different from our home kitchen. So the issue we have here is that understanding food waste is really difficult, is a challenge. Why? Because it's difficult to measure. So within a kitchen, if you ask how are you doing with the food waste, they're gonna answer very well, very good. Then when you answer, when you ask again, how you understand that you're doing well, and how you're gonna improve more, there is no answer. Why? Because basically nobody is able to measure the waste of the food. It's difficult to classify, it's difficult to have the quantitative amount of the waste. So this turns up in the fact that nobody is measuring, and so nobody is monitoring this very important aspect. So the idea here is to develop a tool that can make measurement of the waste very easy and very effective. The tool we have developed with external support is basically a combination of different, let's say, tools. The first one is a camera. The camera which is taking picture of the food waste that is thrown in the bin. The camera is positioned, is installed just at the top of the bin, and is linked on the web with a cloud database that has all the kind of food that can be thrown in the bins. So the system with an artificial intelligence tool is able to recognize automatically the type of food I'm throwing in the bin. At the bottom of the system there is a scale which is measuring the exact amount of food which has been wasted. In this way we are able to, let's say, build very precise, simple but very precise and detailed database that can tell me what kind of food and how much of food I'm wasting every day. In this way we are starting to develop, let's say, a way to monitor how I'm doing. Benchmarking one point of sales versus another one, benchmarking each day, and so it's enabling us to address the root causes of the waste we are dealing. In this process, we are in a pilot phase. We have installed this tool of camera and scale in a couple of self-service we have in Italy. The first evidences, we started the project in October 2021, so it's just at the beginning, but the first evidences are very, very interesting in terms of saving, both, let's say, in cost and also in impact for the environment. So here again, we see a very good combination of the idea that preventing the waste is impacting positively all the things coming from the environment and also our running and operation costs. So, as a conclusion, I would say that the key takeaway I'd like to provide to you is that some of the, let's say, processes that in the past have not been easy to cover, to manage, today are starting to be managed with the help of the technology. So this kind of, let's say, agreement between sustainability and technology, I think will allow us to manage a lot of processes that today are causing waste, but in the future can be handled in a more efficient way. So this is for us the way that we would like to go in the following years. Okay, That's all from my side. If there is any question, I will be happy to answer.
Okay, thanks a lot for this presentation. For a scientist like me, is very encouraging to see that the application of science and technology can help much also in the food production and distribution. I see already some questions here in the floor, so please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. At the outset, let me thank you for inviting us for this conference and for hosting us. A very, very interesting presentation on AI, where anything that reduces food waste, when you say 30% of food is being wasted, at the same time, I think 1/3 of the population is either dying of malnutrition or starvation. So we have to put all our resources. AI is just one. It is very, very important, and right now it's gaining traction and it's really helping. But the problem is also on our side, the consumer side. I mean, our portions that we help or we get from the grocery store, or when we go to a restaurant, a buffet, the thing is that our portion sizes are too large. So also there has to be some kind of awareness on our side, on our part, not to consume or not to fill our plates more than necessary, you see. I mean, AI really cannot do anything. The change has to start with us, that we have to be aware that food is a very precious and very limited resource, and I don't know how we can do that. So that's what I just want to bring it on the table, literally, that it starts with us. The change starts with me and you.
Okay, so, thank you very much. It's a very good point, I think.
Thank
you. If I just can add, I mean, I totally agree. And as you remember, one of my previous pages shared the fact that 50% of the waste is done at home. So it means it belongs to all of us. As always, when there is such an impact which is so widespread, what we need is a cultural change, which is something that is more impactful, but also usually is very slow. So I think that communication, sharing, highlighting the issue and the impact of all this waste is the only way that we need to do. Then maybe usually incentive or are usually working on this side, that is not so easy to put in place. But I think that let's say communication and culture are the way that we can let's say pursue to take this number down as much as possible.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that as your company saves money, emissions, and food in this way, that's certainly applicable to each one of us, of course. Okay, we have another question here.
Okay, Dr. Campagna, I'm Francesco Capozzi from University of Bologna, and I know that big data are a big business in the future, because information could be a good feeding for artificial intelligence, and so to get hints and to get solutions also, because you showed up that most of the work has been done by data analysis, machine learning, and so on. What about privacy? I mean, you put cameras in families' houses, and you collect information about them. So do you expect that, okay, as far as you get aggregate data, there is no problem about it, but who is guaranteeing the public that all the information you are collecting is not violating privacy? I think that in the future there will be some concern about it, and we should be able to explain, like OGM or like gene editing, which is a communication issue, no? To make the people understanding that you are not violating their private life, but you are just collecting information that could deserve attention and could serve as a good reserve or a good tank for solutions in the future. So I think that is a tricky point, especially in some societies where privacy is a big value. What do you think about it?
First of all, thank you for the question. Very, very interesting and stimulating. I'm not sure I have all the competencies to let's say, formulate the correct answer. I think there will be also some lawyer need to be part of the conversation, but I can tell you my personal point of view. First, I link to my let's say speech. At this moment, we are putting cameras within our kitchen. So in terms of privacy, we are not affecting what is the consumption of our single customers. So today, for us, it's still an area where we have, let's say, a comfort zone in terms of privacy impact. Then overall, for sure, we might think about expanding this kind of practice also in area where privacy of the single consumer may be impacted. And I mean, we are constantly in a situation where our privacy is at risk, because when we use our smartphone, privacy, you know, you are, let's say, tracked where you move, what you open in your smartphone. COVID has taught us that we already maybe say have gone through processes that 3 years ago were not thinkable at all. So I think there is always a compromise, a trade-off between efficiency and what each of us could or should put on the table. And I think I don't have the answer which is the right compromise, which is the right trade-off. I have the feeling that let's say we are already sacrificing a lot of our privacy, and it really depends on how, let's say, I would say these data are managed with the correct law, correct regulatory offices that impose a restriction on how to handle data. So if you use the data for the good cause, for sure, I would say, okay. Then, you know, there always might be a leakage in the system. But this, I think, could always happen. So it's difficult to answer. I see your topic, but I think also we are already taking a lot of compromise with good causes, and at the end, I think it's working. So I'm positive overall.
Okay, thanks a lot for your presentation. I don't see any other questions. So we switch to the last formal presentation, which will be given by Elisa Carloni of the Department of Agri-Food Sciences and Technology of the University of Bologna. And we have just heard in this last presentation about food waste. Now this presentation, I think, will provide us with the information how the whole food waste system works, why and how. And I think, as it was already noticed, it's very important for each one of us to be aware of this issue. So Elisa, the floor is yours now.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here with you this afternoon, and I would like to thank the organizers for having me today. So I would like to connect to what has been said by the previous speakers today, and in particular, I'd like to focus a bit downstream the food supply chain by looking at the consumption level. And in particular, I would like to shift, or anyway to focus a bit more on the topic of food waste. So you see this, let's start with some facts, with some numbers. You see this is quite a huge number, and this number, which amounts to 931 million tons, is actually the quantity of food that is wasted every year in the world. And this number comes from the United Nations Environment Programme, which has released a really interesting report in 2021, where they have basically summarized, they have collected and then summarized all the studies that have been conducted on food waste measurement, and they have spotted what are the gaps and what are the challenges when doing food waste measurement. And this was, I would say, a much-awaited report, both from policymakers, but also for researchers, because it represents somehow a milestone in food waste studies. And it is the same report that also tells us in which stages of the food supply chain we are actually wasting more. And I would like here to mention that the United Nations Environment Programme distinguishes between the food waste index, which is the index I'm talking about right now, from the food loss index. So the food waste index basically accounts for all the food waste that is produced in the last part of the food supply chain. So we are talking about retailers, we are talking about the food service, so the HoReCa sector, and we are talking about households. Everything that comes before this stage, so primary production, processing, and so on, is accounted for in what we call the food loss index. So the report tells us that out of the huge number that I was showing you a minute ago, 13% of the food waste come from the retailer stage, 26% from the food and service, and 61%, so it is a huge share, and it amounts to 570 million tons, actually come from the households. And I would like to turn to what is the issue with food waste. I know that this might sound like a rhetorical question because we all know something about the causes, drivers, consequences of food waste, but what I would like you to consider today is that when we talk about food waste, we're not talking only about the issue of food waste as such, because food waste can be understood somehow as the surface of a bigger problem. So let's imagine a big iceberg. Food waste is the top of the iceberg. There is a lot going on behind it. So we could say that food waste is actually only one of the symptoms of a dysfunctional supply chain. And there is basically, this can be better explained by the idea of the food waste paradox. This idea has attained an increasing attention from policymakers in the past years, and it has to deal with the idea of scarcity within abundance. And we can better understand this if we consider that there is a huge inconsistency between what we produce and what we end up eating. So just to give you a better idea of this paradox, we need to consider that we are producing definitely too much food, and yet we are assisting to an increase in food insecurity. This means that only a few people are actually benefiting from the food that is being produced. And this is shown by an increasing food insecurity also in numbers. So the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has estimated that in 2019 there were 690 million people suffering from food insecurity. And this is a problem that does not only concern what we are believed to be developing economies, but also the more advanced one. And at the same time, so we are producing a lot for a few people, and even fewer people actually have access to affordable, healthy diets. There is a staggering 3 billion people that cannot access healthy diet and nutrition. And at the same time, in this panorama, we are wasting more and more food. So you can clearly see where the paradox is lying. But let's try to see what are the costs of food waste. Marco Campagna was mentioning about the greenhouse gas emission percentage, and I'm going to give you some other indicators, which are basically concerning not only the food waste itself, but we need to consider that whenever food is wasted, also the resources that went into making it are wasted too. And so there are what we can call the hidden cost of food waste. So all the waste, the costs that come from the production of the food that are not wasting in terms of water, land, fertilizers, and other inputs. So let's consider that these hidden costs amount to 1.4 billion hectares of land, which is a huge size if you consider that it corresponds to the size of Canada and India put together. In terms of greenhouse gases emission, food waste is responsible for 8 to 10% of the total greenhouse gases emissions in the world. So if you consider that if food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitting country in the world, meaning that the food waste is polluting, is emitting more than any other country in the world except from the US and from China. And finally, in terms of the water footprint, 250 kilometers cubed of water are wasted every year, and this is enough water to fill 100 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. So in this first part, I just wanted to give you, let's say, an overview of the latest data that have been released on food waste, so to have an idea of the causes and the impact of food waste. But what I would like to do now is to zoom in quite a lot and to focus on the Italian case, so to present you some data coming from Italy. And this data that I want to present now come from the REDUCE project. That is a project that has been funded by the Ministry of the Environment, Land and Sea, and of Italy, of course. And that was a project that aimed, first of all, to develop a reliable waste reporting methodology for Italy and provide a first data set for Italy in the last 3 stages of the food supply chain. So retailers, food service, and households. So at the retailer stage, the data has been collected from supermarkets and hypermarkets in 16 stores located in 11 municipalities in central Italy. And the results have shown that 18.7 kilograms per meter squared per year are wasted in supermarkets, out of which 35% is still perfectly edible. And these results come from a 2-year data on in-store food waste and focus groups. Then moving to the food service, the focus here is on school canteens. So in the food service, 78 primary schools in 3 regions in Italy have been analyzed. And the results have shown that out of a bit more than a half kilo of prepared meals, 120 grams are actually wasted. And in this case, the data are collected from interviews and from the waste compositional analysis. The waste compositional analysis, just to mention for those who are not familiar with this methodology, is basically consists of researchers that physically go and check in the bins. They separate the food waste, they weigh the waste, and they categorize it to understand what has been wasted. And finally, getting to the household stage, the results come from questionnaires, from the food waste diaries that have been administered to respondents, and from the waste compositional analysis. And this data has shown that the overall per person food waste average is 530 grams per person per week. And we're talking just about the edible fraction of food waste. And this data, this is a data set, a baseline data set from 2017. We are collecting also, we are currently analyzing data for 2021, and some preliminary analysis has shown that contrary to what we are hearing in the news about a reduction of food waste in households in the COVID pandemic, so we are actually assisting to an increase in food waste in households of circa 180 grams per week. So let's zoom in a bit on the household level, and let's show the results of this diary questionnaire. So basically, the total amount of food waste per year per person is 27.5 kilograms every year. And the main typology of food that is wasted is vegetables, milk, meat products, fruit, and bakery products. And among the causes that have been selected by respondents of the food waste, we have ranking first the spoiled food, so the food was spoiled and they had to throw it out. The second reason was that they didn't like the food, so personal preference. And third, that they either cooked or served too much of that kind of food. An interesting result that arises from this study concerns the gap that exists between the self-perception and the actual behavior. Because first, respondents were asked to report in the food waste diaries all the food that the household was throwing away for one entire week in the 3 main meals of the day. So we're talking about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And after this week, they were asked to assess their perception of the food that they waste. So basically, they were asked, how much food do you think your household is wasting per week? And we expected them to have somehow a clear idea of what they're wasting, since they were reporting in the food diary exactly what they were throwing away. But indeed, the results show that there is a significant portion of respondents that highly underestimate their food waste levels. And finally, the variables that are mainly influencing the production of food waste at the household level are the size of the household. So the bigger the household, the more the food waste. But in this case, the results show that the per capita waste in bigger family is lower. Then we do have the presence of children, which is a variable that highly influences the results, but also the frequency of shopping and the tendency to eat healthy. So these were the data concerning the food waste, but we all know that there is an objective of food waste reduction that we're currently pursuing, and the European Union and also European member states have committed to meeting the Sustainable Development Goal 12, so responsible consumption and production, in particular the target 12.3, which aims to halve the per capita global food waste by 2030. And in order to reach this goal, different mitigation strategies, we have already seen some of them throughout the workshop today. These practices and strategies have been put into practice. So I have reported just a few. This is not an exhaustive list, of course, but this is just maybe a few of them, maybe the latest one. You can see here the communication on circular economy, which had an impact with the establishment of the EU platform on food loss and waste. This is a really active platform. They had an interesting workshop just a few days ago. There have been some legislative acts, like the Directive 851 of 30 May 2018 on waste, which has provided a union-wide food waste reduction target to reach by 2025 and 2030. It has incentivized the collection and redistribution of unsold food. It has tried to improve consumer awareness. Then we do have the farm to fork strategy that they put another step because it provides some legally binding targets to reduce food waste, and it also coordinates and scale up existing actions. And finally, we do have also some cross-cutting actions, such as the development of national strategies for reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, the idea that we need to address and fill in the data gaps. Campagna was showing pretty clearly that there is an issue with the measurement of food waste. And we need to integrate this food waste reduction into existing policies and into educational training in order to increase awareness. And among the mitigation strategy, I would like to present here the European project Law in Food. It is an Horizon 2020. And I'm presenting this one because the University of Bologna is currently working on this project. The project is coordinated by the University of Tuscia in Viterbo. And the idea is that to reach the food waste reduction target, all actors in the food value chain should be involved. So from those who participate in agricultural production, to food processors, retailers, the hospitality sector, the public food service, and consumers themselves. So this is the main idea behind the Low Food project. And this project is aimed, the main aim is that to co-design together with all these actors low waste value chain by supporting the demonstration of a portfolio of innovation. We are not just talking about technological innovations, but we do also have social innovations, institutional innovations, organizational and managerial innovations. And we are targeting specific value chains. So we are active in the fruits and vegetable value chain, bakery products and fish value chains. And we are targeting also in-home and out-of-home consumption. And each of these innovations is actually targeting a typology of action. So we are working towards food redistribution, we are working towards consumer behavior change, food valorization, supply chain efficiency, and so on. And I have here just some of the innovations. We have much more than the 3 that you can see here, and I suggest you to check our website, which is lowincode.eu, to check them out. And I have selected these 3 innovations because we are talking about the consumption phase, and this innovation targets these 3 phases. So the first one that you see here is CAVIRO, and CAVIRO has developed an automated food waste management solution for restaurants, canteens and hotels. And basically, it combines image processing and deep learning technologies with a hardware solution. So in this innovation, all the relevant information of the food that is being thrown away in restaurants, canteens and hotels is captured and analyzed. And this information goes both to the food services operators, but also to the consumers. So in this way, the food services operators can somehow have insights on their work practice and maybe improve them. And at the same time, the consumers know, it gets the information of what he or she is wasting. And therefore, this might also lead them to make more informed decisions on the food they are taking, and they might even lead to a reduction in food waste. A second innovation is then Regusto, which is a native mobile application which allows consumers to buy meals at a reduced price from restaurants, and it helps saving food. And basically, this is a B2C app that has been designed together also with a B2B platform for restaurants. And then next to the app, Regusto is also designed, let's say, a Regusto bag where the food is given to the consumer. And this is an ecological foodie bag, which has become a tool for communication and improvement of people's sensitivity toward the issue. And finally, I would like to present Foresighty, which is a machine learning algorithm which aims to forecast sale of fresh products in supermarkets. So this new technology aims to give supermarkets a more accurate estimate of the future sales in the supermarket. And in this way, the supermarket can order in a more accurate way as well. And this translates into fewer surpluses and that needs to be thrown away, and therefore food waste is prevented, and at the same time, profit margin increases. As I mentioned, these are just a few of the innovations we are replicating and dealing with. Everything that you would like to know about the project is available on our website. And these are just the references I was mentioning, from which I took the data I was mentioning throughout these 20 minutes. And I would like to thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, you can answer that, and you can contact me at the email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elisa. Very, very interesting presentation, very, very informative. So I'm asking here if there is any question. It doesn't seem so, but I have a question that you can probably explain to me. I have presented at the beginning one information which is derived from the UNEP report that you also mentioned, which says that within the household food waste, there is practically no difference in the per capita amount of food waste from families with very different levels of income. So that's something that I presented, but that I cannot explain. So I was wondering if you have an explanation for that, because it seems that it's a flat line. So in every country of the world, the food per capita waste is practically the same.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty interesting result from the report, and maybe also the most striking result that we see when you read the executive summary. It's like striking, because we are used and we are inclined to think that in the so-called developing economies, the waste is not actually happening at the household level, but rather maybe in the primary processing or post-harvest phase because of the lack of infrastructure. And the study has actually shown that the food waste households is, as you said, is a flat line. So we do not notice many differences between high-income country and low-income country. And this is probably due also to the fact that we did not really have many data in the previous reports. So this is the most striking information, I would say. I don't know if this answers somehow your question.
Well, I was wondering if you had, if you had an explanation for this flat line.
Yeah, because it's just that we are inclined to think that that the other countries are wasting less, but the data do show that it's not depending on the GDP per capita. The variables are others, like the household size, or the habits for eating, the frequency of shopping. So the variable is not GDP per capita, but we are considering other ones when we're talking about food waste levels in households.
Okay, thank you. There are several questions, I might say, so please go ahead.
Yes, hello, my name is Maria Peduto, and I am a student that studies sustainable food systems with a focus on food insecurity. And I was wondering, so I guess one of the things that I'm really passionate about is food waste and trying to create a cultural shift to sort of change that amongst my peers and then of course the wider world itself, hopefully. What do you think is the best way to sort of encourage this cultural change for people not to waste food? I've, personally taken approaches of making little food videos on TikTok of oh, here's how you make, leftovers and turn them into a different meal. And I think there's definitely a movement towards that. But what do you think that sort of larger shift could be?
Yeah, thank you very much. And also really interesting about your TikTok activities, food waste reduction, I would say. As I was mentioning, we are trying through the Lowing Food project to act also at the consumer behavior change. So not only the prevention of food in the first stages of the value chain, but also for households and consumer more in general. And I think that, for example, we do have another innovation that I did not present, which is called Capozzi, which, for example, try to somehow give practical advice, because we already have all the ethical and moral motivation not to do so. But then maybe in the routinized life, it's pretty difficult to, let's say, focus on this. And therefore, there are some maybe practical advice that we could give on how not to waste food. And so, for example, this app, which is called Capozzi, I did not present it because I chose other innovations. For example, tells you what you have in your fridge, and tells you what you can cook with that food that you have in the fridge, and also tells you when that food is expiring, so that you know that you can make actually something which also allows you to save time and money, because you are not wasting food and you are cooking with what you already have in the fridge. So this is an example of that. So maybe we should also question about the efficacy of awareness campaign and try to give some more practical advice on what to do in everyday life to improve the food waste prevention for consumers.
Okay, we have another question here.
Yes, thank you very much. And really very, very interesting. But one interesting thing that you mentioned was the food waste index. You know, I'd heard about it a long time ago, but then I hadn't checked it up so long. So if you could just shed some light, what does this food waste index, what are the parameters and what exactly it captures in terms of the data that we can use? And going forward, do you think you can improve upon it? Because it's really not, it's giving us information, but how do we leverage that information? And how do we leverage that data? So if you could just shed some light on the parameters that go into it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is actually a pretty complicated one to answer right now because the report has a dedicated section in which they explain how they had to somehow leverage all the different data that comes from different sources, from different countries and different studies. But basically, the data that they have come from existing research that has been published in the academic world, or coming from the projects that have been conducted on food waste. I can give you the reference to the report, which is called the Food Waste Index, published by the United Nations Environment Programme in 2021. And there you can see that there is a pretty long explanation on everything they did to leverage the different data and to find parameters that could explain and could give us some sound data on that.
Yes, other questions?
Yes. Hi, Elisa. This is Francesco from Unibo 2. So, my question is about, probably is related to the previous two questions. It's about the value of waste. I mean, I'm a chemist, so for me, substances are not equivalent. There are wastes and wastes. It depends on what is the cost. Okay, I can say that it's, in my opinion, much more easy to understand that higher the cost, lower the waste, because people do not like to waste money, probably. But there is any study about relationship between waste and impact on natural resources? Because not all the wastes have the same impact. So I think that the other leverage will be also how much your waste impact on the planet. And that could be unrelated to the cost, to the price, sorry. The cost does not include now the natural resource footprint, but in the future probably you will have it. So what is your opinion about it?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I was talking about the environmental impact, but there is definitely a difference if you're wasting the beef stick, or if you're wasting a leaf of salad, of course, because the resources that went to make the stick are definitely different than the one that are needed to produce a leaf of lettuce, for example. And therefore, even the environmental impact, that the difference of food that we're wasting is creating is different. And so I think that this is something that, I mean, it's already somehow been concerned in terms of academic research, but there seems like there is a mismatch between the academic research and policies. So this is something that is also needed in order to provoke behavioral change in the consumer. We need to understand what is the impact of wasting a certain typology of food in place of the other. So I think it's a really interesting point that you raised here.
Elisa, I think that your presentation has stimulated several questions, so I can speculate that people is getting hungry, so they don't want our dinner to be wasted. But anyhow, many thanks for this very informative presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have an additional short presentation by Stefano Caselli from University of Parma, who asked to give us information on processing systems. So it will not be a formal presentation, but just a 5-minute contribution.
Okay, thank you for hosting this short presentation. I am from the Center for Environment and Energy of the University of Parma, and we have been coordinating a project which has already been mentioned by Professor Capozzi, which has been promoted actually by the agri-food value chain, in particular about sustainable and precision agriculture. We all know that water is fundamental for agriculture, especially in Emilia-Romagna, which is the home of so many valuable food products. And of course, we must cope with the challenge of a diminishing amount of available water for our crops. So the approach of the positive project has been to just deliver the exact amount of water as much as possible, so to go toward precision irrigation. However, the challenge was posed by the agri-food call was to try to provide this service as much as possible to all farmers of the Region Emilia-Romagna. And for this purpose, what we tried to do was to integrate into a public advisory service for irrigation, which is reaching about 16,000 farmers in Emilia-Romagna, an improved irrigation recipe, which takes into account also satellite data. For this purpose, we process at most every 5 days, the images from the Copernicus Sentinel satellites, and we deliver a precision and variable rate irrigation recipe for each registered crop. Now, currently the advice is reaching some demo farms, let's say some pilot farms. However, we have connected the irrigation advice also to the cloud-based control systems of a major manufacturer of irrigation equipment, which has been, in the last summer, has just put into operation about 300 irrigation machines, which can be actually driven for variable irrigation by such a variable rate advice. Basically, we also have made some calculation of what is the potential advantage of precision irrigation based on the current state-of-the-art of the technology. And we saw that considering the amount of land which is currently devoted to crops such as corn and tomatoes in Emilia-Romagna, a more accurate irrigation advice can save as much as 170 cubic meters of water per hectare, which is a good amount, 20 million of cubic meter of water in a season only for the two crops. And if we were to build a reservoir of water to provide the same amount of water for agriculture, then it would cost an estimate of 20 million euros. Just to make a point, what does it mean to cope with climate change? Emilia-Romagna is one of the major locations of tomato cultivation for industry, and in summer 2020 there was a heat wave, and what happened was about all the tomato ripened all at the same time, whereas it was due to ripen in different weeks. And for this reason, about 1/3 of the tomato produce has been lost because it was impossible to process all the tomato at once. So So it is very important to develop AI techniques, data-driven techniques, and variable and precision rate irrigation and fertigation for agriculture in Emilia-Romagna.
Thanks a lot for this presentation. We have heard earlier in several presentations the importance of preserving the water resource. So I think that your presentation stressed even more how big this problem is and how it's possible to go in the direction of saving water, which is an essential part of the food system. Thanks a lot again for your presentation. Okay, so I think this is the moment that you all on the floor were expecting. We have a presentation by Sebastiano Ferlito, who is the chef that is cooking for us tonight, and so it's not a simple dinner; it's a sustainable dinner. So I think that he will be able to explain us why what we will eat is called sustainable. Sebastiano.
So, good evening to everybody. Thank you to be here. Tonight we have a scope to sustainable environment. That's why we choose the product sustainable in this country. Cereal, lamb, local fish, dates, all the things. And we mix with the Italian culture product. Some burrata, some pasta, some basil, some olive oil. That's to create a meeting point on the table with the food. But the scope, the final scope, is sustainable food. That's why we choose only cereal, and this is the major of our product tonight. Okay? Thank you to everybody, and enjoy the food that we serve in a minute. Thank you.
The SHARE project.
Okay, thanks a lot. You've seen what we will have. So while we will be leaving, you will see on the screen a video which was made by the Agri-Food cluster, which will explain some innovation solution for farming. It's a video that has been produced with the involvement of all the universities in our region. So as I said at the beginning, I'm sorry for our participants, our contributors online, because unfortunately they will not be able to eat the excellent dinner that we will eat now. Okay, thanks everybody. We are aware that today is Sunday, which usually it's a vacation day for our colleagues who have presented online. We are very glad to have had all this presentation that I think that all together have provided a very nice picture of what the food system is, what it needs, and what the problems are connected with feeding all of us and hopefully all the people in the world. So thanks again. This is the end for those online. It's not the end for us. So please take your seat and we will enjoy our dinner. Thanks a lot.
Zeoliva on innovative
and sustainable methods in olive growing.
Natural zeolite for reducing the use of pesticides, contrasting climate change and protecting the environment.
Aquaculture, applying ICT and IoT technologies to deliver precision fish farming.
Digitalization in aquaculture to support the activities of aquaculture operators.
Caterpillar.
The Caterpillar project deals with the characterization of functional foods and protein biomass for animal feed
Based on the multi-purpose cultivation of monoecious hemp. Valori Bio
is a project focused on the use of insects, the black soldier flies, as bioconverters of waste and byproducts from the agricultural food chain.
aiming to obtain value from the waste of the livestock supply chain. Preventomics, developing personalized plans for nutrition.
Preventomics will empower consumers through omic sciences.
For the prevention of non-communicable diseases. Strength to food, fostering the development of an economy of quality and including the development of a smartphone application.
Aimed at supporting families in preparing healthy and balanced menus for their children.
Sostinovi, remote farming with drones, robots and smartphones.
It deals with the cultivation of grape and the management of pruning leftover for the extraction of energy and the production of charcoal.
The whole set of projects make use of sustainable approaches from a production, economic and environmental point of view, while preserving the quality and gastronomic tradition, attentive to the improvement of nutritional aspects related to health. Representing real examples of research that goes beyond the state of the art, to develop and apply solutions that will improve the quality of life of the world population.